You were never meant to arrive here, but you did. Hello, everyone. Today, we begin not with a date or a place on a map, but with the sound of a train slowing down. Heavy, rhythmic, like the breath of something ancient and tired. You're standing inside a cramped wooden boxcar. Around you, bodies lean against one another, swaying with the movement, heads bowed, lips cracked from thirst. There's barely air, and what air there is carries the weight of unspoken things. Fear, confusion, resignation. The door slides open. Blinding white light. Cold. Screams, not loud, but sharp, controlled. Commands in a language that doesn't care if you understand it or not. Your legs move before you can think. You're outside, stepping onto uneven gravel. That crunch under your foot? It's the sound of arrival. But it doesn't feel like arrival. It feels like being erased. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time is it. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. Dim the lights. Let your body soften. This one will ask you to feel deeply but gently. And now, you're here. You don't know it yet, but this is Auschwitz. It doesn't look like hell, not at first. There's a gate, and through it, buildings that seem ordinary in shape. Barracks of brick, some wooden huts, a watchtower. But there's something off. Too clean. Too still. The snow falls, but it doesn't settle. The wind moves, but carries no scent of life. Your skin tightens. Your breath curls into smoke before you. Around you, others stumble out of the boxcars, clutching whatever belongings they still have. And then, the first selection. You didn't know the word selection could sound so final. A man in uniform points. Left, right, left, right. No explanation. No pattern you can see. You look into the faces around you. Some try to make themselves look stronger, healthier. Others look down, afraid to catch a guard's eye. When your turn comes, you're pointed left. You think that means something. You'll only learn later what it meant. Or perhaps you never will. Because here, knowing can be its own form of torment. The ones to the right, they disappear behind a line of buildings. Silent, like breath held too long. You're led forward. A number is shouted, not your name. Never again your name. What's strange is how ordinary some things seem. A clipboard, a line, a door. But don't be fooled. These aren't tools of bureaucracy. They're rituals of annihilation. Stripping not only of clothes, but of meaning. Inside, it smells like bleach, cold metal, old sweat. A uniform is thrown at you, mismatched, stiff, no underwear. Just a striped fabric, thin and foreign. Your belongings? Taken. Your name? Forgotten. Your hair? Gone. Buzzed off and swept away like debris. In the mirror, if there even is one, you no longer recognize the person staring back. That's the point. This is not about death. Not yet. This is about unpersoning. Turning someone, you, into something that can be moved, stacked, discarded. And it starts with the simple act of standing in line while others decide whether you matter. The camp has a rhythm. Not a human one, a mechanical, cruel rhythm. March. Stand. Wait. Run. Fall. Wait again. You're herded into a barracks. The bunk is made of wood, 3-tiered, filled beyond its limit. You climb to the middle, squeeze between strangers. No bedding. Just slats. No pillow. Just the throb of your own head against wood. The door slams shut. And the cold? It finds every crevice. You pull your knees close. Around you, whispers in many languages. Some pray, some cry. Most are silent, No one talks about what they saw. You don't either. You stare at the wall, at nothing. You don't sleep. You don't wake. You just begin to vanish. You no longer belong to yourself. You wake up, not because you're rested, but because the shouting starts. Harsh, guttural, slicing through the darkness like a whip. Someone hits the metal door. A fist, a boot. You can't tell. The barrack is chaos now, a flood of groggy limbs and coughing throats, and the scramble for boots that all look the same. There's no sunrise, just a faint change in the shade of the gray sky outside. It's colder than the day before, or maybe your body's just less able to resist it. You shove your feet into shoes that don't quite fit and follow the crowd outside. You don't speak. No one does. Roll call. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But it lasts for hours. You stand in lines, shoulder to shoulder, while guards bark numbers. People faint, are dragged out, or left to lie. You're not allowed to help. The man beside you coughs. You don't look. Looking could make you next. Snow starts falling. Slowly. It lands on your lashes, your hands, but you don't brush it away. You're not supposed to move. You'll barely breathe. The cold seeps in, past skin, through bone. You feel it settle into your lungs like a second, more honest silence. Then finally, you're told to march. But where? To Arbeid, they say. Work. It sounds neutral, even promising. You think, maybe this is how I survive, by working hard, keeping my head down. But nothing here is what it seems. You're sent to shovel snow from a courtyard that will be covered again within the hour. You carry bricks from one pile to another, then back again. You clean floors that will be dirtied moments later by boots made for crushing. This isn't labor. This is punishment disguised as routine. Efficiency here is measured in suffering, not output. The tools are blunt. The handles splinter. Your gloves are a joke, thin cloth torn at the seams. Your hands bleed, but that doesn't matter. Blood is just another fluid now. Like sweat, like tears, like urine on the floor of the latrine barrack where you're only allowed to go once, under supervision, surrounded by others. Hunger starts to gnaw at you by mid-morning. But it's not hunger like you've known before. It's not just a craving or an empty stomach. It's a hallucination. You imagine soup, bread. Even the taste of burnt crust seems divine. And when the actual meal arrives, a bowl of thin liquid with floating specks of something once vegetable, you drink it like a sacred offering. You work through the afternoon, though you no longer feel time. The sun never shines fully. The sky is a lid, pressing down. When your knees begin to give out, you bite your cheek to stay alert. You can't fall. Falling is weakness. Weakness is noticed. Some don't make it through the day. One collapses near the latrine. He's still breathing. A capo, one of the prisoner guards, kicks him. No one moves. Eventually, the man stops breathing. The snow absorbs him slowly, like the place itself is swallowing him whole. And still, no one speaks. At night, when you return to the barracks, you think of warmth, but there is none. Only the stink of feet and sickness and the metallic tang of fear. You eat again. Something that might be bread. Hard, grayish. You chew without tasting. Then you lie down. The bunk is tighter now. Someone new above you wheezes through the night. Someone below vomits and curls away from it. There are no blankets, no privacy, no quiet, only thoughts. They begin as memories, the smell of your mother's cooking, the curve of a friend's laugh, the way snow once meant holidays. But soon, even these fade. You try to remember your own face, not the one in the reflection with hollow cheeks, but the one from before. It doesn't come. And this is when you begin to understand something terrible. Survival here isn't just a matter of endurance. It's subtraction, of warmth, of dignity, of self, and most painfully, of hope. Because hope here is dangerous. It's something they might see in your eyes and decide to extinguish. So you close them, and sleep, if it comes, arrives not as rest, but as pause. A moment of non-existence between the yesterday that hurt and the tomorrow that will hurt again. You learn quickly that pain isn't the enemy here. It's normalcy. Pain is expected, managed, measured. What truly unsettles you are the moments that pretend to be ordinary. A spoonful of soup too warm, a laugh, yes, a real laugh from one of the guards, a sunset that dares to be beautiful. These are the cracks in the horror, the moments that remind you of life and make the absence of it everywhere else unbearable. Today, your task changes. You're moved to a new part of the camp. It's still snowing and the mud is deeper. Your shoes, more whole than soul, suck into the ground with each step, making you stumble. You're sent to carry bags of cement up a hill that serves no purpose but to break bodies. There's no explanation, no endpoint. The bags are heavier than you expected, not just in weight, but in symbolism. With each step, your body begs you to stop. Your muscles burn. Your spine screams, but you move. You move because stopping is noticed. And being noticed is dangerous. Around you, the sound of labor becomes a language. Grunts, slips, curses whispered in every accent of Europe. It's a symphony of the broken, and still it plays on. You're given no gloves today. The bag rubs against your bare fingers, which crack and bleed against the coarse material. You feel it, blood freezing instantly, turning your hands into stone and flame at once. Still, you carry. Midday comes. You're not allowed to sit. Just a few gulps of water, icy, metallic. One man drinks too slowly. A guard hits him across the jaw. The water spills. No one helps. You want to. You don't. Because you remember yesterday, in the afternoon you pass a group assigned to latrine cleaning. Their faces are blank. The smell trails behind them like a curse. One of them makes eye contact with you, just a moment. But it feels like an entire conversation. You're still here. So am I. That's enough. But is it? You return to your barracks with the taste of cement dust in your throat. The inside of your nose is raw. You blow into a scrap of cloth and it comes away red. No one says anything. Blood is no longer a topic of conversation. Dinner comes, the same as always. But tonight, you realize something. You chew more slowly. Not out of savoring, you've forgotten what that means. But because your mouth aches, a tooth is loose. Maybe two. You're only in your 20s. Or were. Time is slippery now. In the silence of the barracks, someone hums. Soft. Almost inaudible. It's not a melody you know. Maybe a lullaby. Maybe a memory. Maybe something invented to replace the sound of everything lost. You close your eyes. And that's when it begins. The dreams. Not vivid, not strange. The opposite. They're dreams of brushing your teeth, of tying shoelaces, of walking without permission. Dreams of things so normal, they wake you in tears. Because here, those things are luxuries, fantasies, artifacts of a life erased. You used to fear death. Now, you fear becoming someone who doesn't fear it anymore. And that's the true horror. Because when death loses its sting, when you begin to forget why you want to live, that's when the camp has won. But it hasn't. Not yet. You still hear the hum. You still remember the man who looked at you with eyes that said, "Still here." And in this quiet, this cold, aching quiet, you hold on to that. Just a little longer. You weren't meant to feel anything here. Not joy, not sorrow, not even fear. Once it became routine. But sometimes, something slips through. A whisper of memory, or worse, the scent of bread. It happens when you're cleaning the path near the officers' quarters. A door opens, and for a moment, a draft carries out something warm. It's unmistakable. Fresh bread, maybe with butter. Your stomach contracts in rebellion. For a second, your knees go soft. Not from hunger, but from the memory that smell carries. Your mother's kitchen, a table, a laugh. And then it's gone. You snap back to where you are. A boot slams the ground nearby. You drop your eyes, clutch the shovel tighter. That moment, as sweet as it was cruel, could have been your last. Because hunger here isn't just emptiness. It's the most intimate form of control. You line up for your daily ration, your metal bowl trembling in your hand from the cold. The soup comes in ladles, measured unevenly. Sometimes thick, sometimes clear. Luck plays a cruel role here. You don't dare ask for more. You don't even look disappointed. You just nod, take your portion, and step away. Beside you, someone coughs. Not the dry kind, but a wet, deep one. Tuberculosis. You know it. You all know it. You want to move away, but there's no space. Everyone is sick, or getting sick, or hiding it well. Illness here isn't treated. It's watched, waited out. The sick either get better on their own, a rare miracle, or they are selected for removal. No medicine, no bandages, just absence. You remember a boy, maybe 15, maybe younger. He worked near you last week. He limped, but he smiled. Always offered half of his bread when someone was crying. Today, he's not here. No one says his name. Saying names can be dangerous, but you think it, quietly. You keep it. You owe him that much. At night, the whispers are louder. Rumors that someone escaped, that someone else was caught with food, that a transport is coming, that it's going to be worse. You stop listening. Not because you don't care, but because you can't carry more weight in your mind. It's too full of calculations. How much bread to eat now? How much to save? Which toe might be frostbitten? Whether the guard on the west block is in a worse mood today. Some make friends, others isolate. You do both, depending on the day, on the cold, on your soul's capacity for connection. One night, a man, older, maybe 40, though no one looks their age anymore, tells a story, quietly, while everyone pretends to sleep. It's about a tree in his hometown, a fig tree, the way it would burst into bloom at the start of spring. He speaks slowly, like someone recalling a dream fading fast. He describes the color, the shape of the leaves, the bees that hovered near the fruit. You don't know why. but your chest tightens. You've never seen a fig tree, but now you feel as if you have. It's one of the rare gifts in this place. Stolen beauty, someone else's memory, lent to you for a moment. A reminder that beyond these fences, trees still bloom, bread still bakes, water still flows clear. The next morning, the man is gone. No one knows where. No one asks. But that night, someone else describes a song. Another, a street in Prague. You join in, quietly. Not with a story, but with a nod. It's enough. For now. You've stopped expecting mornings to feel different from nights. There is no real sleep, not here. Only intervals. You close your eyes in darkness and open them in a dimmer darkness. What wakes you isn't a sunrise, or even the clatter of boots. It's the groan of your own body, your ribs aching from the hard wood beneath you, your legs cramped from curling too tightly, too long. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the person beside you. He didn't move all night. You're not sure he's still breathing. You don't check. The barrack door creaks open. Cold surges in like water through a broken dam. Your breath fogs in the air. Your lips are cracked. Your skin burns where it split in the night. You think of your mother's hands, how she used to rub cream into your fingers in winter. You would complain. Now, you'd give anything for one touch of that softness. Outside, the snow glows faintly under a thick cloud cover. It's not beautiful. It's blinding. You line up for roll call, your knees trembling from the cold, your eyes lowered to avoid attention. Hours pass, or maybe just one. The sun never breaks through. You wonder if it's even there. Someone next to you sways. He's too thin, too pale. A capo yells, shoves him. He falls, doesn't rise. The guard waits a moment, then moves on. No one steps out of line. You're assigned to dig trenches today. The ground is frozen. Your shovel bounces off it uselessly. The frost bites your fingers through the holes in your gloves. You want to scream, but screaming would take strength you no longer have. A girl near you drops her tool. She tries to pick it up, but she's slow. A guard notices. He steps forward. His hand rises. You look away. You always look away, because this place has taught you that morality is a memory. Here, survival is silence. Compassion is currency. And sometimes, kindness is the most dangerous thing you can offer. By midday, your breath is shallow. The cold is not outside anymore. It's in your chest. Your lungs ache. You've been coughing. Quietly, so no one hears. You count your breaths, like steps on a ledge. Lunch is a slice of bread, thinner than yesterday's. You eat half, save half for later. You've seen men killed over stolen crumbs, but you still risk it. Hunger sharpens every instinct and every mistake. That afternoon, the snow turns to sleet. It soaks through your clothes, your skin. The mud pulls at your feet like hands from below. You're so tired. You begin to dream while standing. Not visions, just flashes. Your bed. A door you once opened. The sound of your own name spoken kindly. Then someone shouts. A man is trying to run. He doesn't get far. A shot. Silence, and the wind starts again. The body lies there as you pass. His face is turned toward the sky, eyes open. You wonder what he saw in that last second. You wonder if he imagined something better. You return to your bunk that night with a limp, your ankle twisted in the mud. You won't report it. Injuries don't get treated. They get removed. The man above you is gone. Someone new takes his place without asking. You don't know his name? You won't ask, because names are too heavy, too precious. Because once you know someone, their absence becomes unbearable. So you lie there. You listen to the wind, the coughing, the shifting of bodies in the dark. And you promise yourself, one more day. Just one. You've stopped asking why. The questions used to echo in your head loud and raw. Why is this happening? Why you? Why anyone? But now, the questions have gone quiet. Not because they were answered, but because here, asking becomes a kind of pain you can't afford. You've learned instead to focus on the immediate. Your feet, your breath, your next step. Anything further than that is a luxury you can't carry. Today, you're taken to the quarry. It's worse than anything before. The path there is long, your legs already weak. The air bites. The wind is constant. The stones you must move aren't just heavy. They're humiliating. Sharp-edged, awkward, cold to the touch. You carry them in pairs up and down a narrow trail carved into the earth under the constant gaze of a guard who doesn't blink. You slip. You're kicked. You bleed. But you move again and again. You look around. There are others here who were teachers, artists, accountants. One man once played the cello in Vienna. Now he limps beside you. One shoe missing, his fingers raw. You don't speak, but in the way he lifts the next rock, you can almost hear the music that used to live in him. At one point, you're allowed a break. 10 minutes, if that. You sit on a frozen stone, clutching your knees to your chest, trying to protect the small warmth you've hoarded inside your coat. Someone offers you a crust of bread. It's smaller than a thumb. You take it without speaking. You nod. That's all. Gratitude here is quiet, because even kindness is dangerous. You return to the barrack with your clothes stiff from dried sweat and frozen mud. You peel them off slowly, like removing bark from a tree. Your skin is covered in bruises. Your socks are soaked. You've lost feeling in your toes. You're afraid to look at them. Gangrene is not a metaphor here. It's a sentence. You've seen it start as a spot, then a color, then a smell. You lie down, pressing your feet against the warmth of the man next to you. He doesn't protest. Maybe he's doing the same to the man on his other side. You both know. Tonight, your feet might survive. Alone, they wouldn't. This is how survival happens now. In inches, in breaths, in moments borrowed from others. And then you dream again. This time, it's your childhood room. The yellow curtain. The dent in the floorboard. The pillow that smelled of soap. It's so vivid. It hurts. You wake with a sharp inhale, confused. For a second, you forget where you are. And then you remember. You remember everything. The cold, the silence, the man who died beside the latrine last week, the girl who smiled at you once and never returned, the sound of boots in gravel. You sit up, you press your forehead to your knees, and you whisper, "Still here." It's not a prayer, not a plea, just a fact. And in this place, facts are the closest thing you have to hope. You start to understand the power of eyes. Not your own. You've long since stopped recognizing what stares back at you from the cracked piece of metal they call a mirror. No, it's the eyes of others that speak the loudest now, especially their eyes. The guards, the capos, the ones who choose, who punish, who kill. They don't scream often. They don't need to. Their silence is heavier than sound. You've come to recognize that weight. The way their gaze can pin you in place like a bug beneath glass. It isn't hatred you see in them.
Hatred would be something. No. It's detachment, disinterest. The kind of vacancy that says you're less than air. And yet, even in the face of that vacancy, you flinch. Because you remember what it meant to be seen as human. Today, you're sent to the administrative building. Not for paperwork. There's no paperwork for you anymore. You are the paperwork. A body to be counted. A laborer to be spent. You scrub floors. Polish boots. Carry crates of things you're not allowed to look inside.
You do it without question, without sound. The floor is cold beneath your knees. The soap burns your hands. One wrong movement, one dropped item, and the eyes will turn to you. There's a moment, brief, dangerous, when you look up. A guard, seated at a desk, is peeling an orange. That smell. It hits you like a wave, sudden and overwhelming. Citrus, bright, alive. It drags up a memory so fast your breath catches. Summer. A market.
Your father's hand passing you a slice, still sticky from juice. You blink it away, fast. Because if he notices your reaction, but he doesn't even glance at you. Just throws the peel on the floor. You crawl over, pick it up, hold it just long enough to inhale. A stolen breath of the world that still exists somewhere. And then you drop it in the bin and return to scrubbing. That's the cruelty here. Not just the suffering, but the constant dangling reminder of normal life just out of reach. You see it in the officers' polished boots, in the newspapers they read, in the laughter that comes from behind closed doors. They live their lives within the same fences, but on a different planet. And then there are the selections. They happen without notice, a rumor, a whisper, and suddenly everyone is standing straighter, trying to look stronger, younger, healthier. Eyes are everywhere. A man is pulled from the line. His hands shake. He tries to speak. A guard lifts a hand. The words stop. The man disappears. Later that night, the bunks are quiet. Someone asks, in a voice barely louder than breath, "Do you think he made it?" No one answers, because no one wants to ask what made it even means anymore. Surviving here isn't the same as living. Sometimes it's not even preferable. But still, you lie in the dark. You listen. You imagine a door opening, a letter arriving. A voice, your voice, calling out freely, not in fear. And for a moment, you almost forget the weight of those eyes. It begins like any other morning, with cold, but not just the kind that clings to your skin or bites at your fingers. This is the kind that sits behind your ribs, tight and heavy, as if some part of you already knows what's coming. You wake to the usual shouting. Bodies move in silence, stiff from the night. Someone is slower than the others. A younger boy, no more than 12, maybe less. His face is blotchy from the cold. He's lost a shoe. No one stops to help. Yeah, you want to. But you keep walking. Because today is selection. You don't know how you know. Maybe it's the way the guards are standing. Straighter. Colder. Or maybe it's the silence, a strange, watchful silence that fills the air between every sound. At roll call, you're separated by barrack numbers. Some are told to step left, others right. You glance at the faces around you, trying to read the fear behind them. No one meets your eyes.
Then it's your turn. The doctor, that's what they call him, but there's nothing healing about his presence, points. His glove is clean. His gaze is clinical. Left. You move. You don't breathe until you're far from the platform. You've passed. This time. But others don't. You see them later, walking in a single file line toward the far end of the camp. A place you never go.
A place where smoke rises, always, in a thin column that never stops. You don't talk about it. You don't have to. You feel it in your stomach, in your teeth, in the way the birds never land on that side. Back in the barracks, a man sits on the floor holding a scrap of fabric. It's torn from a shirt, his son's shirt. His face is stone, his hands shaking. No one speaks to him. What can be said? Some mourn loudly. Most do not. In Auschwitz, grief has learned to whisper, to fold itself into gestures. A hand on a shoulder, a piece of bread shared, a look held too long. You lie down that night beside an empty space where someone used to sleep. The bunk feels wider, colder. You close your eyes. You imagine their voices. You promise to remember. Not just that they died, but how they lived. The boy who sang to himself when he thought no one was listening. The girl who whispered stories in Czech beneath her breath. The man who mended socks with a needle carved from a chicken bone. They mattered, even here, especially here. Because in a place built to erase, memory becomes defiance. You whisper names into the dark. Some aren't even names, just shapes of sound, broken syllables, half-remembered beginnings. But you say them, you hold them, because if you forget, who else will? You come to understand that logic doesn't live here. Rules exist, yes, but they shift like smoke. What was safe yesterday becomes fatal today. The line you're supposed to stand behind moves without warning. The words that once protected you suddenly mean nothing. And that's the point. Today you're assigned to carry tools to the storage shed. It's a short task, harmless even. But when you arrive, the door is locked. You wait. Minutes pass. You knock softly. A guard appears. He doesn't speak. He slaps you. Not hard enough to knock you over, but with the casual violence of someone brushing dust off their coat. Then he turns and walks away. You still don't know what you did wrong. Back in line, you whisper about it to the man beside you. His face is drawn, his eyes sunken. He's been here longer. He says, "Don't try to understand. Just survive." And that's the truth. The camp isn't a place of rules. It's a place of unpredictability, deliberate, exacting, cruel. One day, you're allowed to button your coat. The next, someone is beaten for the same act. The inconsistency isn't chaos, it's design. It keeps you on edge, makes you hesitate, paralyzes thought. And you feel it deep inside you, the way it unravels your sense of self. There's no safety in obedience, only in invisibility. You learn to avoid eye contact, to walk without rhythm, to eat quickly but not too quickly, to never be the first, never the last, to mimic others without drawing attention. Even your body begins to shrink into itself. Shoulders hunched, footsteps light. You become smoke in human form, but even smoke casts a shadow. One afternoon, a woman cries out, just once, short, sharp, like something broke inside her. It's unclear what caused it. A memory? A wound? A loss too fresh to hide?
She's pulled from the line, dragged toward the fence. No one moves. No one breathes. And then she's gone. You return to your task, hands trembling. You scrub a floor you know you'll scrub again tomorrow. You sweep a hallway you're forbidden to enter freely. You carry buckets of water so cold your fingers turn blue. At night, someone asks if the woman had family here. No one knows, but someone says, she used to hum. You remember it too. Not a song you knew, but one that lingered, like warmth from a fire long gone out. And now, silence. You start to fear, not just the violence, but the randomness. The thin, invisible line that separates you from being the next one to vanish. There's no justice here, no balance, only the slow erosion of cause and effect. And so you adapt. You do not plan. You do not hope. You do not guess. You simply endure, like stone underwater, like names on wind. And you wonder if the logic is gone, if the rules are fluid, then what remains? Only memory. Only the quiet conviction, somewhere buried deep in your bones, that there was once a world where right and wrong meant something. And maybe one day that world will remember you. You begin to learn the weight of absence. It's heavier than the cold, more permanent than hunger. It collects in the corners of the barracks, in the empty spaces where someone used to lie, in the quiet gaps between footsteps, in the unfinished sentences that no one dares complete. Today, you don't see Joseph. He was small, even for a boy of 14. Always moving, always whispering something just out of earshot. Sometimes you think he did it to remind himself that words still existed. That language hadn't been taken from him entirely. Now, he's gone. You ask no one. You don't need to. You feel it. It's not dramatic. No one screams, no one sobs. His blanket is folded. His shoes, too big for him anyway, are gone. Just gone. That's how most leave here. Quietly. Without a story. And yet, they linger. You feel his absence when someone else takes his place in the bunk. When the nighttime silence stretches just a little longer, no whispered words filling it. Loss here is cumulative. It builds like layers of dust, like ash. You learn to grieve in pieces. Sometimes it's in the way you eat slower. Not because you're savoring, but because a memory caught in your throat. Other times, it's when you wake suddenly in the night, sure that someone is beside you, only to find the space empty again. You're not alone in this. Everyone here carries someone inside them, a brother, a mother, a friend, a neighbor who once handed them a warm roll over a fence and smiled. You see it in the eyes around you, not just fatigue, but loss. Deep, grinding, cellular loss. And perhaps the cruelest part? You don't get to mourn. Mourning is a luxury. It takes time, space. Teach here. There's only motion. Well, forward. Always forward. Toward the next command. The next shovel. The next number shouted in your direction. Even when the ache is unbearable. Even when your chest is a closed fist of memory. Even when you wake whispering someone's name and can't remember if they were real or just someone your mind made up to survive. And then there's the guilt. You begin to feel guilty for remembering, guilty for forgetting, guilty for waking up alive when others did not. It wraps around you like the cold seeping into your joints. There's no place for it, no relief. But then, a moment. You're walking to the latrine, and someone drops a potato skin. It's filthy. You pick it up anyway, brush it off, and press it to your lips. It tastes like nothing, but it makes you think of soup, of kitchens, of someone's hand peeling that potato with care. And that, somehow, brings Joseph back for a second. His voice, his whisper, his way of existing even when the world wanted him gone. And you think, maybe remembering his resistance, maybe carrying them in silence is the only rebellion left. So you walk back, slower. You hum softly, beneath your breath. Not his song, yours. But it's enough, because in a place that tries to erase, a single memory becomes a monument. And tonight, the absence feels a little less empty. You stop measuring time in days. Clocks don't matter here. The sky tells you nothing. The calendar's just a whisper from a world that forgot you. Instead, you mark time by absences. Who's no longer at roll call? Which bunk is empty? How many times you've chewed the same piece of bread in silence? At some point, your body starts to forget the world it came from. You no longer startle at gunshots. Your fingers no longer flinch when they bleed. You walk a little slower, but with more purpose. Not because you're strong, but because you've learned the rhythm. Learned when to stop, when to bend, when to disappear. And that's the worst part. The transformation is so gradual you don't see it happening. You forget what you looked like before. Not the face you lost that long ago, but the posture, the presence, the small movements that made you you. There's a mirror in one of the side buildings, a shard of metal, polished just enough to reflect. You see yourself once, by accident. You don't stop. You don't look again. Because that person is a stranger now. You think of your name sometimes. Whisper it in your mind like a spell. It still exists, doesn't it? Back home, someone must have said it out loud. Once, maybe. But here, you are a number, and numbers don't dream. Still, the soul resists in strange ways. There's a man in your barrack who collects string, bits of thread from uniforms, rope from bundles. No one knows why. He braids them into patterns at night, small shapes no bigger than a thumb. He doesn't speak much, but once you ask him what they mean. Reminders, he says. Of what? He shrugs. Texture, color, a way to keep my hands human. And suddenly that makes sense, because even as your body shrinks, even as your memories blur, some part of you fights to remain, to feel, to connect. You do it by tracing letters in the dust, letters no one sees. You do it by whispering stories to yourself before sleep, fragments of places, people, laughter. You do it by listening when others speak in their dreams, not because you understand, but because it reminds you. The soul is still speaking, even here. One night, a new arrival joins your bunk. He's too clean, his face still full, his eyes too wide. He doesn't speak, just lies there staring at the ceiling. You recognize the look. It's the moment before the mind breaks. So you lean closer. You say one word, name. He doesn't answer. So you tell him yours, not me, not the number, not the new one, your real name. The one that tastes like home. He blinks. Then softly, he tells you his. Just a whisper. And in that moment, something small returns. Not hope, not quite, but continuity. A thread braided across silence. You sleep that night with a little more weight in your chest, the good kind, the kind that anchors you. And you think, even in this place,
You are not entirely gone. Not if you remember your name. Not if you speak it. Not if someone else hears it and says, "Me too." Silence here isn't the absence of sound. It's a presence, a thick, humming thing that clings to walls, to skin, to the corners of your thoughts. Even when people speak, it's there, underneath every word, every breath. The kind of silence that isn't natural. It's engineered, enforced, learned, and yet there are kinds of silence. The silence of waiting in line, too afraid to move. The silence of someone collapsing beside you and no one bending to help. The silence in the barrack at night, when even sleep feels like surrender. But there's another silence too. You find it in a moment you didn't expect. You're walking to work detail, shoulders hunched against the wind. When it happens, the snow stops. The wind dies. The guards are far enough behind that their voices blur. And suddenly, for just a moment, there's stillness. Real stillness. It fills your ears like water. No shouting, no marching, no coughing, just breath, just frost, just the sound of your boots pressing into powder. You stop walking, just for a second, and you hear it. The world, the real world, a bird, somewhere, far off, maybe outside the fences, maybe not. It sings one sharp note, then flies away. That one note breaks something in you, not painfully, but cleanly, like the snap of frozen twine. You remember that there is a world beyond this place, not in memory, not in dream, in sound. It's still there, and so are you. Later in the barracks, someone tells a story, not loudly, not clearly, just a few words as they're drifting to sleep. It's about a bakery. He used to live above it, he says. Every morning, the smell of bread woke him. Rye, poppy seed. Once, a plum-filled roll, the kind with sugar crusted on the top. He speaks like it's happening now, like he's still waking to that smell. No one interrupts. No one even moves. Because for those few moments, you're there with him. You feel the heat of the oven, hear the crackle of crust, taste sweetness on a tongue that's forgotten what that word means. Then he's quiet, and the silence returns. But now, it's changed. Now, it carries memory, flavor, life. You lie in your bunk, eyes open, watching the ceiling that drips with frost. And you think, maybe silence isn't always absence. Maybe sometimes it holds everything you need to remember. So you listen, to breath, to stillness, to the way your own heart whispers, you're still here. And in that whisper, in that impossible quiet, you find something sacred. Stillness, not numbness, not surrender. Stillness that watches, waits, endures. The kind that trees carry in winter, the kind that snow holds in its fall. And you think, perhaps this too is a form of resistance, to be quiet and still and alive. Hope is a dangerous thing. It flickers where it shouldn't. It arrives in moments too small to name. And here, in this place where hope is punished, where dreams are replaced with numbers and names with silence, its presence can feel almost treacherous. But it comes anyway, not as a promise, not as a plan, as a word, a look, a pause. Today it comes in the form of a rumor. There's whispering in the barracks, barely audible. Something about the Russians, that they're close, that maybe, just maybe, something is happening out there. Something that could break the sky open. You don't believe it. Not really. But you notice the way people move slightly differently. The way someone stands taller during roll call.
the way another dares to speak above a murmur. It's not a revolution. It's not resistance, but it's something. Later, a woman shows you a piece of paper. It's hidden in the sole of her shoe, soaked through, torn, nearly illegible. A page from a book. Poetry, maybe. In a language you don't speak. She doesn't explain why she keeps it. She doesn't need to.
You know why? It's the shape of the letters, the curve of a line that once meant beauty, once meant choice. She lets you hold it just for a moment. It feels fragile and incredibly alive. Then she folds it away again. At lunch, your bread is slightly thicker. Maybe the man with the ladle looked away. Maybe the person ahead of you didn't take theirs. You don't question it. You eat it slowly. Not because you're trying to savor, hunger doesn't allow that, but because it feels different. Heavier, more real. Like the world somehow shifted an inch. That afternoon, you carry water to the edge of the camp. You pass a fence you haven't seen before, newer maybe. Or maybe you just never noticed. On the other side, nothing but snow. But for a moment, you see footprints leading away from the gate. Not toward the barracks. Away. You stare at them too long. A guard shouts. You move faster. But the image lingers. Someone walked there. Someone crossed the line. Maybe they made it. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. What matters is the mark. Proof that someone once stepped beyond. Back in the barrack, your hands shake as you try to sleep. Not from cold, but from something else. Something you dare not name. A kind of trembling inside you that says, maybe. Maybe there's more than this. Maybe you're more than this. A man nearby hums a tune. One you don't know. It's out of tune. Barely there. But it holds something. A thread. And you catch yourself breathing differently. Slower. Not in fear. In rhythm. You close your eyes. And for the first time in days, or weeks, or years, you imagine after. Not clearly. Not in detail. But vaguely. The weight of a coat that fits. The smell of real bread. A voice calling your name like it means something again. You don't cling to it. You let it pass through you. Like a breeze, like a ghost. But it leaves something behind. Not hope, not yet. But readiness to hope again. Someday. There's a kind of defiance that lives in softness. You wouldn't think so. Not here. Not in a place designed to flatten every curve of compassion, to drain every ounce of tenderness from the air. And yet, it survives. Not in loud acts of rebellion, but in the smallest, quietest gestures. A crust of bread shared, though you're starving. A hand brushing against yours in the barrack, not by accident, but to say, I see you. Today, you witness something that almost makes you forget the cold. A man kneels beside an older prisoner. His face is drawn, his back curved with the weight of age and labor. His fingers are stiff with frost. He can't fasten the buttons on his coat. The younger man, without a word, kneels and does it for him, one by one, slowly, as if those buttons are the most important task in the world. No one stops him. No one reports him. We all see it. And no one looks away. Because in that moment, something rare unfolds. Dignity. Not in the sense of grand speeches or noble acts, but in presence, in service, in remembering, even here, what it means to care for another person. You carry that with you all day. It burns warmer than any coal fire. Even as you work, even as your muscles scream, you remember it. And somehow, your spine feels straighter.
Not because your burden is lighter, it's not, but because, just for today, it doesn't feel like you're carrying it alone. Later, while cleaning the edge of the latrine, you hear a cough. Deep, wet. A man is crouched, trembling, unable to rise. He's too sick, too far gone. No one moves. You feel your body hesitate? This is the moment. The one where your instinct to protect collides with your instinct to survive. You choose to move. You take him by the arm, lift him gently. He barely weighs anything, just cloth and bone and breath. You walk with him back to the barrack. No one thanks you. That's not why you did it. You lie down beside your usual place. You're shaking. You don't know if it was brave or foolish. You don't care. Because something in you needed to do it. Something stubborn. Something human. That night, someone passes you a sliver of onion. Just that, a sliver. Tiny, sharp, pungent. It stings your mouth. You eat it slowly. You whisper, "Thank you." The person nods. No names, no backstories. Just shared space, shared breath. And in that fragile community, you begin to see the cracks in the camp's design. They wanted isolation. Instead, there is quiet loyalty. They wanted fear. Instead, there is protection. They wanted emptiness. But here you are, full of aching, stubborn care. You remember a line from your childhood, something said by a teacher or a grandparent. Kindness isn't weakness. You never understood it fully. Now you do. Now you live it. Every time you choose not to look away. Every time you give what little you have to someone who has even less. Every time you say nothing, but stay. And so, even in this place, especially in this place, the kindness becomes your rebellion. Soft, unspoken, enduring. It comes slowly, this realization. But your name is fading. Not because you forgot it. No, it lives in the back of your mind like a light you shield with your hands. But here, it's never spoken. It's not called, not written, not used. Day after day, the absence of it grows. Instead, there's the number. It's stitched into your uniform, barked at roll call, scribbled in ledgers. It follows you like a shadow, even when you sleep. You flinch when you hear it. Not because you don't recognize it, but because you do. You've started to answer to it without thinking. And that frightens you. Because that number was chosen for efficiency, for control, for erasure. And somehow, bit by bit, it's replacing the name your mother whispered into your hair. The name your friends once shouted across streets. The name that held your memories, your laughter, your history. You test it one night. Lying in your bunk, you whisper it, your name, softly, just once. It feels unfamiliar on your tongue. Like a language you used to speak fluently, now clumsy and thick. No one hears, but still, you feel exposed. You whisper it again the next night, quieter still. You begin to repeat it silently in your head during roll call, as if to remind yourself, I existed before this. And then, unexpectedly, you hear someone else do it. Not aloud, not in words, but you see the shape of it in their lips as they rest. Their name, formed in sleep. And suddenly, you're overwhelmed by the enormity of it. All these people, all these lives reduced to digits. Entire cities of names turn to smoke. Whole languages stilled. You start to remember names that weren't yours. The boy who drew faces on the barrack wall with charcoal. His name was David. The woman who once recited poetry under her breath. Mira. The man who saved half his bread for a friend he never saw again. Antek. You say them in your mind, one by one, like prayers, like resistance. One night, you ask someone nearby, softly, in the dark, "What's your name?" There's a pause. Then, almost inaudibly, "Elzbieta." The name lingers between you. Fragile. Precious. "Thank you," you whisper. And in that moment, you know. Remembering each other is the most human thing you can do. The guards never use names, because names carry weight.
They carry memory, place, family, meaning. And here, meaning is the one thing you were never meant to have. So you start collecting them. Not in writing, not aloud, just in memory. You gather the names of those who shared their bread, those who whispered lullabies, those who smiled when there was no reason to. You carry them with you, tucked into the folds of your thoughts, like secret talismans. Because in a place where identity is stripped, remembrance becomes sacred. Not just of your own name, but of theirs, of everyone they tried to erase. And you think, maybe when this is over, if this is ever over, that's what you'll give back to the world. The names, all of them, spoken aloud, one by one, as if saying them could bring them back, as if remembering them is enough. You begin to notice the children more, not because there are many, there aren't. Most were taken elsewhere or never made it off the trains, but a few remain. Shadows among shadows, too light to work, too small for shoes that fit. They hover at the edges, quiet, watching. And what's unbearable isn't that they cry, it's that they don't. Children who don't cry have seen too much. One of them is a girl, maybe 7, maybe older, it's hard to tell. Her cheeks are hollow, her eyes too large for her face. She doesn't speak, ever. She just follows an older woman around, holding the hem of her coat like a lifeline. You see them sometimes during roll call. The girl mimics every movement the woman makes, raising her chin, straightening her shoulders, as if pretending to be older might buy her time. It's a performance you've seen before. Children here learn quickly. They know when to look away, when to make themselves invisible. They've memorized the sound of boots, the rhythms of footsteps, the difference between hunger and danger. They've learned, faster than you ever did, what it means to survive. But they don't play. They don't ask questions. They don't run. And that's what breaks you. One day, you'll catch the girl looking up at the sky, just for a second, her mouth slightly open like she's tasting something that isn't there. Snow, maybe, or silence, or memory. It's such a small thing, but it makes your chest ache, because children aren't supposed to be still. They're supposed to chase birds and fall in mud and argue over nothing. They're supposed to ask questions. Loud, insistent, endless questions. They're supposed to dream. And here, they don't. You remember your own childhood, how ordinary it was, how safe. You think of the toys you left on your bedroom floor, the stories your parents told you before bed. You didn't know then how sacred that was. Now you do. The girl disappears for a few days. You try not to notice. Try not to ask. But you feel it, the way her absence shifts the air. Then one morning, she's back. Different. Her head is shaved. Her coat is gone. She walks alone. No one says a word. That night, you share your bread with her. You don't ask where the woman went. You don't offer comfort. You just sit beside her and hand her a piece of your world. She takes it, says nothing, but her eyes meet yours for the first time.
And in that gaze, there is no child left. Only endurance. Only what's needed to last one more night. You think about how some people break here. Others disappear. But the children, they become something else. They become the quietest witnesses. Not just to what was done, but to what was lost. And you wonder, if they survive this, what kind of world will they grow into? Will anyone believe what they saw? Will they ever laugh again? You hope they do. You hope one day that girl runs, far and fast, and that no one ever makes her be quiet again. There are days when breathing feels like defiance. Not because the air is scarce, though it is sometimes, but because being alive, simply being, feels like a provocation, like a crime, like something that should have ended long ago, and yet hasn't. You feel it in the way the guards look at you, like you're an inconvenience, like your continued existence is an offense to their order. You breathe anyway. Today, you're assigned to clean near the crematorium. You've never been this close before. You don't look up as you walk. You know what you'll see. The chimneys, the smoke, the thick, gray air that clings to your skin and smells like something you can't, won't name. You scrub the floor outside, your knees sinking into the frozen mud. A guard passes by, muttering something under his breath. You don't react. That's the safest way to survive here. Become furniture. Become background. Make your breath shallow, your steps soft. But today, your chest is tight. Not from fear, from shame. From the knowledge that people walked here, stood here, died here. That their last breath happened beneath this sky. That their names were never said again. You stare at the ground as you work, but even the mud seems to whisper. There are rumors. Everyone has heard them. About what happens inside. About what the smoke means. No one says it out loud, but you know. Everyone knows. And so, every breath you take near this place feels stolen. Unjust. Like something that doesn't belong to you. You don't want to breathe, but you do. Because that's all you have left. The simple, aching rhythm of lungs pulling in air and letting it go. Later, when you return to the barracks, you sit in silence. No one asks where you were. No one asks what you saw. But someone places a hand on your shoulder. Just that. No words. And you think, maybe breathing is enough. For now. You lie in your bunk and stare at the ceiling. You listen to the sounds around you, coughing, snoring, the shift of wood and bone. And beneath it all, the quiet. You take a breath. It's shaky, tired, but it's yours. And in that breath lives everything they couldn't take. Memory, love, the sound of your mother's voice calling you in for dinner. The warmth of a dog curled at your feet. The weight of a book in your hands. Pages whispering between your fingers. You breathe for them, for the ones who can't. And maybe that's the only prayer you have left. Not spoken, not sung, just the sound of lungs insisting, softly, stubbornly, still here. The gates are still closed, but the air feels different. There's a tension, not like before. Not fear, not exactly. It's a kind of waiting. A holding of breath that stretches across the camp as if even the buildings are listening. Rumors come faster now, louder. That the guards are packing, that the soldiers have grown quieter, that something is shifting beyond the fences. You don't believe it. You can't afford to.
Because to hope too early here, that's another way to die. And yet, you see it in the way people speak to each other. In the way someone gives you an extra bite of bread, in the fact that no one is shouting this morning. Still, survival has taught you caution. You move the same way. You carry the same buckets. You bow your head when ordered. But inside, something flickers. Something wild. Something you're afraid to name. That afternoon, during work detail, you pass a man who was here long before you. His face is leathered with cold and memory. You nod. He nods back.
And then, under his breath, he says, "They're leaving." You don't answer, but you feel your heart pound in response. What does it mean to be on the edge of something you never thought would end? You don't let yourself imagine too much. Not what home will be like, not who might still be waiting, not how you'll look at yourself in a real mirror. Because what if the gates never open? What if this is just another game? That night, no one sleeps.
You lie in your bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds. Footsteps that stop and start. Doors that open and close. Voices, not harsh, not loud, just moving. Then silence, longer than usual, heavier. When you finally drift off, it's not rest that finds you. It's a dream. You're walking through a city, your city. There are trees, full, green, real. You see faces you know, some that are gone. You hear your name. Someone calls it from a window. You turn to look and wake up. It's still dark, but outside, shouting. Then, when gunfire, a single burst. Then nothing. You stay still. You wait. And when morning comes, the camp feels hollow. The guards are gone. Just gone. No announcements. No farewell. Only their absence. And now, this strange, terrifying thing. You are alive. But what does that mean? You stand among others in the yard, not speaking. No one moves toward the gates. No one runs. It's like the whole camp has forgotten how. Because this place taught you not just how to suffer, it taught you how to pause life entirely. Now you must remember how to live. You look around at faces you know, faces you feared would disappear, at people holding each other, crying softly, laughing even, though it sounds foreign. You take one step forward, then another. The gates stay closed, but something in you opens. And for the first time in longer than you can measure, you allow yourself to think. Maybe, just maybe, you survived. Freedom arrives without ceremony. No trumpet, no declaration, just silence. And then men in uniforms, unfamiliar ones. They speak in a language you don't understand. Their eyes are wide, horrified. They move slowly, like people entering a sacred space. They are not here to hurt you. It takes you hours to believe it. You watch as they move through the camp, opening doors, speaking softly, helping those who can no longer walk. Some of them cry openly. Others seem numb. You feel both things at once. Someone tells you they're Russians. You nod. It doesn't feel real. You expect to be ordered into lines again. You wait for the shouting, the boots, but none come. The crematorium is quiet. The dogs are gone. And the fences, though still standing, no longer seem to hold power over your body. You don't run through the gates. Most of you don't move at all. Because what do you do when the cage door opens and you no longer remember how to fly? In the days that follow, food arrives. Real food. Blankets. Soap. Some eat too fast and fall sick. Others refuse to eat at all. as if their stomachs don't believe the famine has ended. You sit on the ground, holding a cup of broth. You sip it slowly, not because you are afraid, but because the warmth feels like a secret, and you're afraid it will vanish if you drink it too quickly. Your body is still here, but your mind? It's scattered across 1,000 memories. You see faces that aren't there. You reach for names you can't say aloud. You wake at night thinking the guards have returned, only to find the air still and kind. There's no plan, no guidance. Some stay in the camp, too weak to leave. Others begin walking. Where? They don't know. Just away. You think about home, if it exists, if anyone is there, if they remember you. But mostly, you think about those who didn't make it. The girl who used to hum. The man who whispered poetry in Polish. The boy who looked at the stars every night as if they might answer. They aren't here, but you carry them in your eyes, in the way you fold your coat, in the softness of your voice when you speak to someone who still can't believe they've survived. You don't feel joy, not yet. You feel weight, a heavy, sacred weight, to witness, to remember, to speak one day, when you're stronger, when your body is more than bone, when your voice returns. For now, you sit. You sip broth. You let the sun touch your face. And in that moment, small, quiet, real, you are something the camp tried to erase. Alive. It doesn't end when the gates open. Freedom, as it turns out, is not a door. It's a path. And it's long, uneven, paved with ghosts. You leave the camp slowly, not because of weakness, though your body is still healing, but because part of you is afraid to step outside. Afraid the world beyond won't make sense anymore. Or worse, that it will, and you won't belong to it. The road ahead is quiet. Others walk with you, not in lines, not under command, but still. Your steps are synchronized. Habits of survival take time to unlearn. Villages appear, towns. You see faces filled with pity, with disbelief. Some offer bread, others only stares. And that's when the second silence begins. Not the silence of the camp, but the one that comes after. Because how do you explain where you've been? How do you find the words to describe a place where names were taken, children were stilled, kindness was whispered under blankets? You don't. At least, not right away. You settle somewhere, a room, a bed. You sleep without fear for the first time in years. And yet your dreams are loud. Sometimes you wake with your heart pounding, certain you're back in the barrack, waiting for roll call. Other times, you dream of names, so many names, and wake with the taste of ash in your mouth. You try to eat regularly, to speak slowly, to be seen again as a person. It's not easy, but you try, because you are not just surviving now, you are rebuilding. You find a pencil one day and start writing the names. The real ones, the ones they couldn't erase. David, Mira, Elzbieta. You write them on scraps of paper, on the wall, in your memory. You say them aloud when no one is listening. And little by little, you begin to feel them returning, not in flesh, but in presence, in the way your hands soften when you touch a piece of bread, in the way you tilt your head at the sound of birds, in the way you wrap your coat around someone smaller than you in the rain. 'Cause you learn something there, something you didn't know you were learning. That even in the worst place, even in the silence of smoke and snow, there was love.
It wasn't loud. It wasn't safe. But it lived.
In the way someone helped you tie your shoes with frostbitten hands. In the way someone saved you the corner of their crust. In the way someone said your name just once so you wouldn't forget. And now, that love belongs to you. To carry, to pass on, to live in your voice, your hands, your breath. And every time you speak the truth, calmly, softly, without shame, you bring back not just your own soul, but theirs too. The ones who never got to leave. The ones who walk beside you still, in memory. So tonight, as you close your eyes, not from exhaustion, but from peace, you say their names once more. And then your own. Not the number, the real name. The one that means still here, still human, still home. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. It doesn't need words. It doesn't need dreams. It speaks in aches and pauses and sudden silences that stretch longer than they should. At first, after the liberation, you think you're healing. You eat. You sleep. You walk without orders. But then come the moments, unexpected, sharp, when your legs give out beneath you for no reason. When your stomach turns at the smell of cooking meat. When your shoulders hunch instinctively at the sound of boots on concrete. Because the body, it doesn't forget. It remembers the cold not just as sensation, but as a pattern of tightening muscles and clenched fists. It remembers hunger not as emptiness, but as dizziness, as hallucinations, as the ache of watching someone else eat. And it remembers fear as tension in the spine, as breath that refuses to go too deep, as a reflex to always look for exits, even in safe rooms. You go to a doctor eventually. He touches your ribs gently and says your bones are healing. You nod. But what you want to say is, it's not the bones. It's the way your hands still count every crumb. The way your mouth moves around food, slowly, protectively. The way you still sleep curled up as if there are 3 people in your bed. There's a scar on your ankle. Small, faded, but precise. You don't remember how it got there. A fall, a kick, a piece of wire. The truth is, it doesn't matter. Because in that place, pain didn't ask for your attention. It just happened, layered over itself, until it became part of your skin. You start noticing how others carry their bodies too. A man on the train flinches at a whistle. A woman stares too long at a spoon. A child breathes too fast when someone raises their voice. They were there, too. You never speak of it, but you all know. The body speaks. Even in silence, you begin to create rituals for yourself. Not to forget, but to remind gently that this body is yours again. That it's allowed to feel softness, safety, choice. You warm your hands with a cup of tea each morning. Not because they're cold, but because the warmth feels like a promise. You take walks in quiet places, not to get anywhere, just to feel the rhythm of your feet returning to earth. You bathe slowly, letting water run over scars that no longer hide. And sometimes, when no one is looking, you touch your face, trace the shape of your own cheek, your jaw, not to admire, just to confirm. You're here, still inside this skin, still home. And slowly, your body begins to trust again. Not fully. Not always, but enough to reach, to hold, to rest. And that is healing too. Not forgetting, not erasing, but becoming whole again, even with the cracks, especially with the cracks.
You expected joy, or at least recognition. When you left the camp, when your feet crossed into cities again, you thought the world would stop, that people would rush to meet you, that arms would open, that someone somewhere would say, "We waited." But most of them didn't. Not because they were cruel. Not always. Sometimes they were just afraid. You returned to streets that looked the same, but felt smaller, quieter. People walked past you quickly. Some nodded. Others looked away. Some asked hesitantly, "Where were you?" And when you told them, or tried to, their eyes shifted. Their bodies stiffened. Their hands reached for something to do. A dish to wash. A door to close. Because your presence reminded them of what they didn't suffer. Of what they allowed. You realize that many don't want your story. They want your silence, they want your survival, but not the details. They want the version where you were lucky, where it wasn't so bad, where at least you made it. But it was that bad, and you weren't lucky. You were alive in a place that crushed most people into ash. You were not chosen. You were spared, arbitrarily, briefly, and you carry that with every breath. You try to speak once at a dinner table among people you knew before. It is patience. It is the quiet, steady work of memory waiting for the moment it will no longer be turned away. The first night in a real bed should feel like a gift. Clean sheets, a room of your own. No shouting, no boots, no cold creeping through every crack. Just stillness, warmth, and the chance to stretch without fear. But when you lie down, it feels wrong. The mattress is too soft, the silence too vast. You stare at the ceiling, hands crossed over your chest, body curled out of habit. You say something simple. There were days we ate nothing. The words hang. No one responds. Someone coughs. The conversation moves on. You sit back. You understand. This world is not built for truth. Not yet. It will listen to your story one day, maybe, but not now. Not when your skin still holds the smell of smoke. Not when your voice still trembles in the middle of sentences. So you write instead. Letters, fragments, memories. You find others, survivors like you, and together you speak in a different language. One of half-finished thoughts, of long pauses, of hands clasped without explanation. They understand, because they too returned to homes that had forgotten their faces, to neighbors who closed windows, to cities that asked them to rebuild quietly, as if trauma were debris to sweep aside. You walk down a street one afternoon and hear laughter. It's a normal sound, innocent, but something in you recoils. Because joy here feels like betrayal, like running too far ahead without looking back. And yet, you want to laugh, too. You will laugh again. But it must be real, not forced, not because someone tells you you should be happy. You'll laugh when your body remembers what safety feels like. You'll speak when the world is ready to hear, not just listen. And until then, you'll hold the truth quietly, firmly, because silence has many forms, and yours, now, is not surrender. It is preservation. Your muscles refuse to relax. Your breath catches at every creak of wood, every whisper of wind, because safety, once lost, doesn't return with furniture. You stay awake for hours, eyes wide, heart restless. You try to remind yourself, you're not there anymore. This isn't the camp. This isn't the bunk. This isn't the night you'll be taken.
but your body doesn't listen. It remembers the way sleep made you vulnerable, the way darkness was never quiet, but full of coughing, weeping, dying. It remembers how mornings could bring disappearance. So, you lie there, waiting for something, a voice, a command, the familiar sting of cold. But nothing comes, just the soft rhythm of your own breath and the terrifying absence of suffering. You wake hours later, not rested, but surprised, confused, alive. You move slowly through the day. The taste of breakfast is muted. The sun on your face feels foreign. People smile, and you try to mimic them, but it feels like performance. That night, the bed waits again. This time, you bring a blanket to the floor. Not because it's more comfortable, but because it feels familiar, safe. Your body trusts the hardness, the cold, the cornered space. It takes weeks, maybe longer, before you dare stay in the bed through the whole night. Even longer before you stop waking at every sound. Before you learn to stretch without guilt, to sigh without dread. One night, you dream of your old bunk, the narrow wood, the bodies pressed beside you, the girl who whispered names in her sleep. You wake up crying, not for what you lost, but for what you've carried into this room with you. Because the bed doesn't just hold your body. It holds memory. It holds absence. It holds the shape of what sleep meant when you were not free. So each night, you return. Not to sleep, to learn how to sleep again. You light a candle. You place a stone beneath your pillow. You breathe through clenched teeth until your jaw softens. And one night, without knowing how or why, you sleep through till morning. No dreams, no panic. Just light, soft, steady, real. You open your eyes, and this time your first thought is not fear. It's presence. You are here. In this bed, this room, this life. And slowly, quietly, you begin to trust the night again. There comes a moment, ordinary, unexpected, when you see your reflection. Not a fragment in broken glass, not the shadow in metal, but a real mirror. Clean, whole. You hesitate because for so long you've avoided this. Your body moved, it obeyed, it endured, but your image, yourself, has been a ghost, a presence felt but never truly seen. You take a breath, then look. And for a moment, your mind doesn't know what it sees. The face is thinner, the eyes deeper, the skin mapped with time, with memory. There are lines that weren't there before. A tightness in the jaw, a furrow between the brows. But that's not what strikes you. It's the absence. You used to recognize something behind your own gaze, a rhythm, a certainty. Now, there is stillness, not peace, not yet. More like a person holding their breath underwater. You touch your cheek. It's your hand, but it feels like someone else's gesture. You think of the day your head was shaved, how the hair fell in clumps, how the mirror, if it existed, would have shown you a stranger, hollow, marked, stripped. You think of the number they gave you, the one you memorized because you had no choice. You think of how you stopped looking into people's eyes, even your own. And here you are, looking again. Slowly, you lean in. You notice your lips, chapped but softening. Your nose, familiar. Your chin, stronger than you remembered. Then the eyes, still yours, but darker now. Not just in color, in memory. They've seen too much, watched too many fade, learned how to hide, but they haven't closed. And that, you realize, is something. You don't cry, you don't look away, you just Stay. For minutes. Maybe longer. Not to admire, not to mourn, just to acknowledge, I am here. I am this. And that act, quiet, private, intentional, is a kind of return. You start looking more often. Not always, but enough. You wash your face with care. You try different clothes, different angles of light.
You learn how to hold your gaze without flinching, and eventually, the mirror stops feeling like a witness. It becomes a companion, one that doesn't lie, one that says, you were there, and now you are here. Changed, yes, but not erased. Never erased. Some stories never reach the air, not because they aren't true, not because they aren't needed, but because the people who carry them simply couldn't or chose not to.
Or decided in a moment of stillness that silence was the only language that could hold their grief. You meet them slowly, in shelters, in towns, in waiting rooms where papers are filled out with shaky hands. Survivors like you, but different, because they never spoke. Not to neighbors, not to children, not even sometimes to themselves. They rebuilt lives from ash, grew gardens, learned trades, smiled in photographs. But the camp, the hunger, the selections, the smoke lived behind their eyes. Quiet, unmoving. You used to wonder why. You wanted to tell everyone. You needed to speak, to explain, to bear witness. But they folded their truths like laundry and placed them in drawers no one opened. And with time, you understand. Because silence, too, is a form of survival. Sometimes the wound is too wide for words. Sometimes language feels too small, too polite, too clean.
And sometimes there's a fear deeper than memory, that if you speak it, if you say what you saw, the world will look at you the way it did back then, with disbelief, with dismissal, with distance. So they chose stillness. You see it in the way an old man grips his teacup when someone asks about the war, in the way a woman smiles too quickly when someone says, it couldn't have been that bad. You see it in hands that never stopped shaking, in eyes that look past you to a gate long closed but never forgotten. You don't judge them, you thank them, because their silence kept the stories whole, uncompromised, undiluted, like bones buried deep, waiting for the right moment to rise. And maybe, just maybe, by telling your story, you're telling theirs too. You are naming what they protected. You are honoring what they couldn't say, not because they didn't want to, but because the weight was too heavy to lift alone. So you say it for them, gently, clearly, in their names, in their honor. Because not every survivor had the luxury of voice, but every silence was still a testimony, still a monument, still a refusal to let the truth be erased. You begin to relearn the world in rituals, not grand ones, not religious or ceremonial, just small, steady acts that tie you back to the ground. You make tea each morning. The water takes time to boil, and that's part of the point.
You measure the leaves carefully, not because it matters, but because it does. Precision, once forced upon you in fear, now becomes comfort. Choice, you fold your clothes with care. Not because anyone will inspect them, but because neatness once meant survival, and now it means dignity. You place a glass of water by your bed each night. You never used to, but now the presence of water calms you.
There were days when thirst wrapped itself around your throat like rope. Now, the sight of a full glass is a kind of prayer. You start to walk again, not just from place to place, but to be in the act of walking. You choose streets with trees. You count the leaves. You let the rhythm of your steps remind you that this is your body, and it is not being chased. You visit markets. The noise at first overwhelms you. All those colors, all those choices. You remember how bread once meant luck. Now it means variety, freshness, a future. And you find yourself touching things before you buy them. Running your fingers along the crust of a loaf, the softness of fabric, the coldness of metal. Because touch is how you reconnect with life, with now. You start writing letters. You don't always send them. Sometimes they are to people who are no longer alive. Other times they are to the version of yourself who still lives in that other place. You tell her, you made it. You tell her, I remember you. You tell her, you can rest now. You light candles, not to mourn, but to illuminate, to bring warmth into corners that once held only shadow. And every ritual, Iki, and each repeated intentional act becomes a stone in a path you are building back towards yourself. You begin to cook again. You find a recipe from childhood, something simple. Onions, potatoes, salt. The smell fills the room and you cry. Not because of the onions, but because the scent reminds you of laughter. Your own, maybe. You return to a world that never stopped moving. Cars speed by. Doors open and close. People speak quickly, as if time itself were a race. They tap their fingers when they wait. They check their watches. They sigh when the line is too long. Their lives, you realize, are not built on endurance, but on acceleration. And you don't move that way anymore. You walk slower. Not because you're weak, but because your body learned in the worst place imaginable that rushing wastes breath. Or someone else's. It doesn't matter. The memory is a whole, and you let it stay. You don't rush healing. You don't seek a finish line. You move with care, because survival was fast, urgent, brutal. But living is slow. It asks you to notice, to repeat, to choose. And these small rituals on the tea, the glass of water, the folded shirt, they aren't just habits. They are maps, ways back to joy, to softness, to life. With time, survival becomes something else. Not a state of emergency. Not the flinching pulse of hunger or the echo of commands, but a responsibility, a presence, a legacy. You begin to realize that making it out alive wasn't the end of your journey. It was the beginning of someone else's memory, because you remember, and that remembering matters. Not just for yourself, but for the ones who didn't have the chance. You start to write more seriously now, not just fragments or dreams, but full names, dates, faces. You dig into your memory like a garden you've been afraid to till. Carefully, gently, turning over pain to find the roots of truth. You speak, sometimes, at schools, at gatherings, in small rooms where people sit in silence, waiting. You tell them what it was like. You tell them about the girl who hummed, the man who braided string, the child who looked at snow like it was a miracle. You don't tell them everything. You couldn't. But you tell them enough, so they know it happened. So they know it can happen. You see the way they listen, not with pity, but with awe, with weight. And you feel, maybe for the first time, what it means to transmit, not just endure.
You were not saved to forget. You were spared to carry. You begin to find meaning in small acts of continuity. You plant flowers that bloom late, just as you did. You learn the names of their petals. You keep them near your window and water them as gently as you once washed another survivor's hands.
You hold a grandchild, not yours perhaps, but someone's, a soft bundle of laughter and breath, and you think, this is what they wanted to destroy, not just lives, but futures. And yet, here we are, living, still. You remember those who could not speak. You remember those who spoke and were not heard. And now, you speak, calmly, firmly, completely. Because if memory is a weight, then testimony is how we carry it, together. You don't claim to be brave. You don't claim to be whole. You claim only this: you survived. And because of that, there is a name on a page that was never burned. There is a story told that was never silenced. There is a voice, your voice, that rises softly but unshakably into the dark, saying, I remember. I was there. I am still here. And perhaps, in the end, that is the truest form of victory. Not vengeance, not forgetting, but the slow, sacred work of keeping each other alive, one story at a time.
That speed means nothing without meaning. That stillness sometimes is the bravest act of all. So now you pause at doorways. You take time to feel the sunlight on your face. You breathe before speaking, not to hesitate, but to be present. And sometimes that makes the world impatient. You notice the glances, the frowns, the way people shift when you take too long to answer a question. They don't mean harm. They just don't understand what it cost you to return to this rhythm, to choose every word, every motion as if it matters, because it does. You've seen what happens when time is used as a weapon, when every minute is punishment, when every second could be your last. And now that you're free, you refuse to let time become something that pulls you forward without care. You keep your own pace. You eat slowly, savoring even the bitterness. You listen fully when someone speaks, not waiting to reply, just receiving. You remember how it felt to be unheard, and so now you offer others the dignity of space, but it isn't easy. There are days when the noise of the world overwhelms you. The rushing, the shouting, the machines, the endless need for more, faster, now. It presses in, and you feel yourself retreating, not in fear, but in protest. You find quiet places, parks, libraries, rooms with soft light and fewer clocks. You learn to protect your slowness. You learn it isn't weakness, it's survival, transformed into wisdom. And slowly, a few people begin to match your pace. They walk beside you without urging you forward. They wait when you need silence. They sit without needing to fill every minute with sound. They don't know your story, not fully, but they feel its echo in your rhythm. And they respect it. You begin to rebuild your days not in hours or appointments, but in moments. A hand on your shoulder, the sound of rain on a window, a cup of tea cooling slowly between your palms. And you realize this is how you live now, not to keep up, but to stay true, because after everything was taken, your time was the first thing you reclaimed. And now it belongs to you. Sometimes it's the smallest things that carry the heaviest memories. You find them in drawers, in coat pockets, in the folds of old cloth. A spoon, a handkerchief,
a scrap of paper with a name scribbled in fading ink. These objects don't speak, but they remember.
One day, while unpacking a suitcase you haven't touched in years, you find a button, mismatched, rough-edged, dark with time. You hold it in your hand and remember the boy who gave it to you in the camp. He'd found it in the mud and said, "Now I have two." You never learned his name, but he gave you that button when your own coat tore. And for a moment, you were warm. You kept it, not because it was valuable, but because it meant someone saw you.
That button now sits in a small wooden box by your bed. You touch it sometimes when words fail you. It grounds you. It speaks a language only your bones understand. There's a fork, too, bent, tarnished. It came from the kitchen where you were made to wash dishes you were never allowed to eat from. One day, the head cook, a prisoner like you, slipped you a slice of potato and said nothing. You used that fork. You kept it because it meant kindness, however dangerous.
And there's a piece of fabric, soft, striped, part of a sleeve once. You wore it for months, maybe years. It still smells faintly of smoke, of sweat, of time that refuses to be measured. These are not museum pieces. They are anchors. They don't shout. They don't teach. They remember and in your place when you cannot. You try to explain their meaning once to someone younger. They say, "It's just a spoon." You nod, because how could they know? How could they understand the sacred weight of an ordinary object made extraordinary by survival? You place it gently back into the drawer. And that night, as you lie in bed, you remember the girl who taught you how to fold socks so they'd last longer. The man who gave you his last match so you could see the sky for 1 minute more. The woman who sewed messages into seams no one would ever see. They're all gone, but their stories live in these objects. And so you care for them, not as collector's items, but as graves, as gravestones, as reminders that even in a place built to destroy, people still made things, still passed things on, still left behind pieces of themselves too stubborn to disappear. And you, too, will leave something behind. Not grand, not loud, but real. And perhaps, one day, someone will hold it in their hand and feel, without knowing why, the heartbeat inside it. Silence used to be something forced upon you.
It came with boots and shouting and the weight of fear so heavy it crushed your voice before it could form. In the camp, silence wasn't peace, it was survival. It was what filled the spaces after a name was no longer called at roll call. It was what remained when no one dared to ask, "Where did she go?" But now, silence is different. Now, it's yours. You choose it. You sit by a window in the early morning and say nothing. Not because you have nothing to say, but because quiet feels sacred.
It lets you listen to the wind, to the world, to the echo of your own thoughts that no longer need to shout to be heard. You don't rush to answer questions anymore. You give yourself time. You let your words come slowly, and people learn to wait. There's power in that, because once they didn't wait for you. Once you had to speak in codes, in glances, in the rhythm of a breath, shared under blankets. But now, you speak when you want, or not at all, and it is enough. You watch people now.
The way they fill silence with noise, phones, music, chatter. You understand it. The fear of stillness, the discomfort of being alone with your own memory. You've been there, but you've also passed through it. You've made a home in quiet. You've built a space where the absence of sound isn't emptiness, it's presence. And sometimes you meet others who carry the same kind of silence. You recognize them before they speak, in the way they sit a little longer before answering, in the way they look out a window with eyes that seem to see something far older than the view, in the way they choose words like planting seeds, gently, with care. You don't talk about the past unless you want to. You don't explain the weight you carry. You don't need to justify your pauses. You simply exist. And in that quiet existence, there is healing, there's rest, there's something holy. The world is loud, still full of fast questions, fast opinions, fast grief. But you've learned to move like water over stone, soft, persistent, unafraid of stillness. And when someone asks why you sit so long in silence, you smile and say, because I can. Because once, silence was a cage, and now it's a garden, where memory blooms not in noise, but in breath, where pain softens into reflection, where you are free, truly free, not just to speak, but to choose when not to.